In the first weeks of the pandemic shutdowns, it wasn't clear which of our twin impulses would win out. We're all in this together. Or, I don't know what to do with yeast, but I'm gonna buy every package so you can't do it. The global crisis was an opportunity to unite against a common enemy, one that was impersonal and apolitical, like Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum did in Independence Day. It was our chance to summon the very best of our better angels. One night, Minnesota Public Radio invited everyone to step outside and sing together, "You've Got a Friend." It was a great sentiment, even though no one could follow the words or the melody. And the old people thought it was by Carole King, and the rest of us just thought it was that one from Toy Story. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you gotta do is call Buzz Lightyear, and he'll be there, because you've got a friend in me. We were all in it together. But the next day, the posts went up on the neighborhood's Facebook group about how singing aerosolizes viral particles and shamed the singers for trying to kill the grandparents. Hospitals filled, businesses collapsed, people started speaking in language of the apocalypse, but it felt like we skipped right to Judgment Day presided over by Mark Zuckerberg. No one knew the rules, except to be sure no one else was following them. On the one hand, you had the grocery wipers, who spiked their coffee with Purell, called the park police on teenagers playing soccer. On the other hand, there were posts with a half dozen women, half drunk, who insisted they were safe because they all knew each other. COVID only passes through people you didn't want to invite to book club. The pandemic also offered a lot of time to reflect on parenting, other people's parenting, and just how bad they were at it. Our isolation bred self-righteousness, and social media rewarded our most misanthropic instincts. Except, let me tell you a different version of this story, the version where the world doesn't rise and fall with Generation X. Let me tell you about the bakers. The boys and their friends set up a weekly pop-up bakery. They sold homemade scones from a card table in the front yard. Masks were required. Customers drank coffee 6 feet apart, and a very small child used very, very long tongs to hand over pastries. The boys knew kids were missing out on school lunch, so they did it to raise money to fight child hunger. They were 9 and 12. Let me tell you about the high school seniors. Maybe more than anywhere else, in Minneapolis, the pandemic is wound up inextricably with the murder of George Floyd and the cries for justice it sparked. Online graduation came on the 3rd night of protests, when the National Guard moved through our neighborhoods in armored vehicles and helicopters whirred overhead, and the white people patrolled the streets, accusing each other of being white supremacists from Colorado, just like Facebook told us to. The block planned a mini parade before the Zoom commencement and curfew. Someone even ordered a confetti cannon, which they decided to save for another occasion. When the time came, the graduates hoisted signs that read, "Justice for George," and "Breonna Taylor, say her name," and "Black Lives Matter." These are their graduation pictures, and they're beautiful. They walked in their caps and their gowns, and in their pride and in their grief. They held all the things together at once, because that's the world that we've given them, and they did not look away. And let me tell you about the shoes. One night we heard protesters coming down Chicago Avenue. My daughter threw on her bright yellow signature Crocs with the gibbets she'd traded with friends, and we ran across our alley to see. They had already marched a mile from 38th, and they were headed further still. A woman in all business clothes was walking barefoot right down the middle of Chicago Avenue, carrying her heels. "Her shoes," I whispered as she walked past. "She needs shoes." At this, my daughter looked down at her own feet, ran after the marchers, and came back barefoot. My kid couldn't undo the killing of an unarmed man. She couldn't unwind centuries of racism that made it possible or really even likely, but she could offer her shoes. I can imagine what the Facebook group said about the not COVID compliant hug she got from a stranger in the middle of a pandemic, and I don't care. These are just tiny examples of what young people were doing while we were unfriending each other online and in real life. They wrote poems, they wrote songs, they practiced point alone on a sheet of plywood because creating is always an act of hope. They pierced their ears and dyed their hair. They fell asleep on FaceTime because somewhere their friends were alone too. They questioned authority and they walked out of schools in every corner of the state because they believe it will make a difference. So you can miss me with your complaints about Gen Z being shallow or what TikTok means for the future of humanity. We took school from them and bitched about bars being closed. We fought online about individual liberties. They organized Instagram prom. We drew lines, they made posters. We posted memes about self-care, but they took care of each other. We asked everything of them and they rose. We had an opportunity to be better. We blew it. But the kids are all right.